You don't need a recipe to welcome friends, new or old. Hello there. And you won't need one to cook for them either. I'm Michael. Welcome to the neighborhood. Can I give you guys a hand? Just the true spirit of hospitality. Let me share a secret recipe. Discover an ingredient that fires your imagination. Choose other flavors to match. Find the best way to cook them. My secret recipe? Cooking without a recipe. Why don't you come on over to our house for supper?
Sounds good.
See you at 6.
Thanks, Michael.
A new family's moving in next door, so naturally Rachel and I want to welcome them to the neighborhood. We'll get to know them right here in the kitchen. Now, I was saving this for Sunday, but I think tonight calls for something special. A beautiful prime rib of beef. Now, I know a big piece of meat like that can be a little bit intimidating, so today I'm going to show you how to really roast beef. There are 4 simple steps to cooking a prime rib, or any cut of beef for that matter: seasoning and searing, roasting and resting. First, the seasoning. And that means salt and pepper, which we often take for granted. But when it comes to adding flavor, nothing's more important than salt and pepper. Now, I actually have quite a collection of both. Various sea salts from around the world, white, green, red, and black peppercorn. But hey, if I've learned anything as a chef, simple is always best. So I actually prefer coarse kosher salt and the wonderful aroma of freshly ground black peppercorn. But before you actually season the meat, take the time to dry it, because dry meat will actually sear better. That should do. And now the salt and pepper. But don't be afraid of this stuff. Give her the gusto. Season heavily. And here's what I like to do. Hold your salt up high, and that way you'll get a nice even dispersal of it. You don't end up with all these little salt clumps all over the surface of the meat. You'll get every single surface of the beef. Season heavily. There we go. And same thing for the pepper. Give her the gusto. There's no such thing as too much pepper on roast beef. Now, you don't need a big fancy roasting pan either. In fact, I usually use a simple skillet. And just like I take the time to season the meat, I also take the time to season the skillet. Here's what I mean. A stalk of celery and a carrot and an onion will make a nice aromatic roasting rack. These veggies will add lots of flavor to the meat, and they'll also add lots of flavor to that pan that will ultimately end up in the gravy. I think our new neighbors are going to love their introduction to the neighborhood. This beef is ready to start its roasting journey. It's hot in there, but that's the idea, because that high heat is going to sear that meat quickly. Start it high, finish it low, and you'll always have a beautiful roast beef. But you know what? That beef looks pretty lonely in there. I think it's going to need some potatoes. Hey, nothing's better than beef and potatoes. Or for that matter, a nice sandwich on moving day. Some ham and cheese should do the trick. With some whole grain bread, now we're talking. And which cheese? Got Parmesan, cheddar, oh, Cambazola. This is one of my favorite cheeses. It's kind of a cross between a brie and a blue. Some nice deli ham with my favorite mustard, a little Dijon. Now for the cheese. My mom taught me how to make the world's best grilled cheese sandwiches, and she always used butter. Now the key to a great grilled cheese sandwich is the heat in the pan. Just below medium works best, kind of the same temperature you would cook a pancake at. There we go. And now it's time for step 3 on the roast beef. It's already been seasoned and seared. Now it's time to start roasting. For that, I want this oven at 300 degrees, a relatively low temperature, because if I kept it at the high temperature, the meat would start shrinking. Low temperature is the way to roast. Hey, a beautiful prime rib of beef, some grilled cheese and ham sandwiches. What a wonderful introduction to the neighborhood. Hey, I made you a snack. Enjoy. We have new neighbors moving in, and since Rachel and I remember the chaos of moving our family, we've invited them over for supper. We'll save them the hassle of setting up their kitchen while they sort their world out.
Nice surprise. Great to have a chef next door.
You can fill your kitchen with hospitality too, because the simple act of sharing is a wonderful way to welcome anyone, anytime. To mark this occasion, we're going to enjoy a full-blown prime rib of beef. It's been seasoned with salt and pepper, seared with lots of high heat, and now it's resting in a nice warm oven. Now the only thing better than roast beef with baked potatoes is roast beef with baked stuffed potatoes, a perfect way to dress these up to meet their new neighbors. I make mine by simply trimming off the tops like that. And of course, a good baker potato is the best for this kind of thing. I'm trying to get as close as I can to the skin, because the more potato I take out, the more flavor I get to put back in. These were actually one of the first things that my mom let me experiment with when I was a kid, because you really can't mess them up. Just about any flavor under the sun tastes good in a baked stuffed potato. But when I was a little kid, I quickly figured out that a good stuffed potato always had bacon and some kind of cheese in it. Now I find that the best way to crisp bacon is to add just a little splash of water to the pan. It'll help the bacon release its fat, and it'll help it crisp evenly. Now, which one of these cheeses is going to make the cut today? Well, I've got some beautiful cheddar cheese. This is a great choice, of course, with bacon and potatoes. But you know what? My new neighbors really seem to enjoy that Cambazola cheese that I put in their grilled cheese sandwiches. It's kind of an entry-level blue cheese. I wonder if they'll enjoy a stronger blue cheese in their potatoes. What makes cheese blue anyway? Stilton, Roquefort, Gorgonzola, Cambazola. You either love them or you hate them, because you can run, but you can't hide from blue cheese. Blue cheese is the result of a happy accident. Long ago, a lucky cheesemaker discovered that some forgotten cheese had turned blue with mold. The real miracle, though, is that somebody had the courage to try it for the first time. It turns out that a very specific bacteria, Penicillium roqueforti, adds a distinctive blue-green color to blue cheese while it ripens. The mold grows inside the cheese, breaking down complex organic molecules into simpler ones. It smooths out the fibrous structure and adds lots of sharp flavor and aroma. Today, there are many types of blue cheese, each with their own distinctive flavors. Connoisseurs celebrate the rich mellowness of Stilton and its sharp aftertaste. They love the pepperiness of Roquefort and the creamy smoothness of Gorgonzola. My favorite? Cambozola. It's a creamy, smooth, brie-like hybrid and a great way to dive into the colorful world of blue cheese. Some moldy flavors for my new neighbors. I sure hope they like blue cheese in their potatoes. I know they'll like bacon in their potatoes, but not all that bacon fat. I'm gonna strain that off. There we go. So this can just go right in with the blue cheese and the potatoes. Let's see, that's gonna need some salt and pepper and some kind of green herb flavor. Actually, green onions will do. I'll just mash away. Blue cheese is one of those flavors that either you love it or you hate it. All right. And now all you have to do is fill those potato shells right back up. Now, oh yeah, how's that beef doing? Does that ever look good? So how do you know when you're roasting meat like this whether it's actually done or not? Well, I suggest you do what the pros do. Take its temperature, because that's the only guaranteed way to make sure that you don't overcook it. Now when I cook roast beef, I like it medium rare, and that means it needs to reach 135 degrees. Getting close, and it's not quite done yet. This beef is still going to need to spend some quality time in the oven. We have new neighbors moving in, so to help them settle into their new kitchen, we're getting them out of it. While the dust settles, they're coming here for dinner. I love how the simple act of cooking can be so welcoming. Sharing food is a great way to get to know anyone. So I've got a beautiful prime rib roast getting to know the oven. I seasoned it first, then I seared it, and now it's roasting comfortably. And a tray of blue cheese stuffed potatoes are waiting their turn in the oven. What a beautiful piece of meat. I think it's done, but I better double check. Let's take its temperature again. Now when I cook roast beef, I like it medium rare, and that means it needs to reach 135 degrees to be perfectly done. That also means I need to pull it at 130 degrees because it will actually continue to cook for a few minutes after it comes out of the oven. And it looks like it's ready to go. But this prime rib's not done yet. It still has one very important step to go: resting. So I'm gonna let this rest for at least 20 minutes or so. And I'm resting it on a rack, not in direct contact with a flat surface. If you do that, you actually encourage the meat to release juices, and you end up with that pool of juice that you've seen before. Rest it on a rack. That's the best thing you can do for the meat right now. Now it's time for one of my favorite things when I roast meat. It's time to make the gravy. I Adios, onion. And I'd like to get some of that fat out of there too. I simply pour everything into a jar where the fat and flavorful juice quickly separate, and now it's really easy to pour that fat off. Now don't worry if there's still a little bit of fat left behind, because after all, fat is flavor. Now I know what needs to go into that pan. Some red wine. Did I say some red wine? I think I meant to say a lot of red wine. Now I don't want my gravy to be too watery, so I'm going to take a moment or two and evaporate off the water content of the wine. Don't worry though, flavor's pretty heavy, it'll stay behind. Now I just happen to have some homemade beef stock that I made and froze into cubes a few weeks ago, but if you don't happen to have some of this kicking around, it's okay to use canned beef broth now as well. Now that's a lot of flavor. It's time to start thinking about thickening this up a bit. And for that, I usually do one of two things. Either I make a roux, which means butter and flour and cooking and simmering and stirring, which I don't have time for, or I use simple cornstarch. Cornstarch is really easy to work with, but if I sprinkle it directly into the pan, it might clump. So the best thing to do is dissolve it with some water, about equal parts. Then start slowly adding the cornstarch slurry. And then simply stir it out, and if it's not as thick as you'd like it to be, just add a little more. That's looking pretty good right there. And I just thought of one more flavor to add to this. Where is it? Oh, my homemade horseradish. Hey, try making this at home sometime. You'll never buy it from a store again. Horseradish is a long, tapered root. It contains a few volatile compounds that quietly mind their own business until they get riled up by a cook. Then they explode with unforgettable intensity. To harness the aromatic pungency of the root, simply peel it and toss it into a food processor. Process the works until it's finely chopped. Add a few balancing spoonfuls of sugar, then add enough cider vinegar to form a loose paste. And season with salt. Then put on your seatbelt and have a taste. Don't worry though, like all the best things in life, prepared horseradish will mellow with age. Very nice. You know, I think my new neighbors are going to be pretty excited that they moved in next door to a chef. Now, I can't think of a better way to welcome a new family to the neighborhood than with a beautiful roast prime rib of beef. Because nothing says hello like a nice, warm, inviting, home-cooked meal. And a plate full of blue cheese stuffed potatoes and a bowl full of steamed broccoli. Now, Mother Nature doesn't always cooperate when it comes time to serve a prime rib. I've got 5 people at the table tonight, but there's only 3 bones on here. 1, 2, 3. So what do? Well, it's actually quite simple. I usually begin by simply slicing the meat right off the bones. So start right here, just above those bones, and let your blade follow right down the bones. Use them as a guide for your blade, just like that. Now it's easy to cut this into nice, even slices. Here we go. That's a big piece of beef right there, and it's perfectly cooked. Just look at that color. That's because I gave it time to rest and relax. The meat reabsorbed all that agitated juice. It's in perfect shape now. There we go. Now, I always like to add a little bit of fresh pepper at the last second before I send the meat out to the table. That's because the pepper loses a little bit of its flavor in the hot oven. That should do. This beef is ready for prime time. This calls for a little quality control. I think that'll do nicely. You know, I'm sure your kitchen is a welcoming part of your neighborhood too, especially when you create and share a simple meal. Prime rib is not just a cooking adventure, it's a celebration for family and new friends. Welcome. Welcome to supper.
Thanks for the invite.
All right, dig in. We're pretty informal around here.
This was one of the properties that I thought would be just perfect. Never thinking you'd get it. It's beautiful. Just all came together.
It's pretty special, isn't it?
Pretty special.
And I should warn you, there's blue cheese in those potatoes. I'm sort of taking a risk that you guys would enjoy blue cheese.
It's especially nice to have a chef living next door.
Well, we're glad to have you as neighbors. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.